their potential and feel at home in their body. So what I wanted to do to cover today was to provide five top tips for supporting hormone balance, energy levels, mood, and just as a really good foundation for kind of supporting our health overall. Particularly because often as women, we kind of give so much to others and put ourselves at the back of the queue. And we kind of want to support and nurture everybody else and feel like we are selfish in a way for looking after our own needs. Whereas self-care, taking some time each day, whether that's 5-10 minutes, even if it's locked in a bathroom trying to just have a bit of a break, is so important for so many aspects of energy levels, stress levels, restorative sleep, hormone balance particularly. So whilst we think about self-care, it isn't something that should be deemed selfish. By looking after ourselves and topping up our own tank, it means we have so much more to give to not only others but to ourselves as well. So it can be really hard if we've been struggling with, a busy work schedule or a bad night's sleep, and we just don't have enough energy to kind of get through the day without anyone kind of stepping on that last nerve. So these top tips, I want them to be, they are simple, cost-effective, really easy ways of getting some support for you daily and providing that real good foundation. So our bodies are incredible. They are always looking out for us and trying to bring kind of everything back into balance. But often, and like many of my clients, when they first come to me, say they feel like they're fighting against or battling against their own bodies. So the things I want to talk about are kind of helping to tune into that and nurturing our body rather than kind of fighting against it. So hormones often get a bad rap. We kind of get thrown around the term hormonal as something as a criticism, but hormones are so important, not just for kind of having a baby, but also for good energy levels, appetite, stable weight, strong hair, skin, nails, memory and concentration, as well as good sleep. So if we can keep our hormones in balance, so many other things start to fall into place as well. And we often kind of put up with symptoms, whether that's mood swings, period pains, cravings, cramps, heavy painful periods, irregular cycles, because often we're made to feel that these are a normal part of being a woman. And whilst they may appear quite common, they aren't necessarily normal part of being a woman and are often a sign that our hormones are kind of a bit out of balance and need a little bit more support. So I think it's quite a staggering figure, but 80% of women suffer from some form of hormonal imbalance, which kind of results in a mixture of physical and mental health challenges due to low estrogen, low progesterone, or an imbalance between the two, among many others. So our hormones, whether that's progesterone, estrogen, insulin, testosterone, thyroid hormones, to name a few, can be thought of as kind of an orchestra, each having its own role to play, playing its own tune, but needed to kind of form that bigger picture, that bigger tune of our health, really. So our hormones are an intricate system that should work ideally like a well-oiled machine. No hormone works in isolation, they work in synergy, and ideally in balance. So just like taking, say, a progesterone only pill, there are knock-on effects to the other hormones that as nothing kind of works in isolation. So common hormonal imbalances that are often manifest within women are things like estrogen excess. So that can look like things like changes in sleep pattern, an increase in appetite, metabolic rate changes and slows down, which can then lead to weight gain, particularly around the middle, and also a higher perception of stress. On the other end of the spectrum, that you can have estrogen insufficiency, and that can look like things like reduced libido, menstrual irregularities, or anovulation, so not ovulating, which then has a knock-on impact on the amount of progesterone that we get in the cycle, mood changes, infertility, or things like high testosterone in conditions like PCOS with excess hair around the face, around the jawline, around the belly, around the boobs, around places that we don't really want it to be in, acne, and also a higher risk of diabetes, because there are other implications when it comes to the knock-on impact of testosterone on insulin. And also another becoming increasingly more common is low thyroid function. So that looks like things like low energy, fatigue, weight gain, particularly hard to shift around the middle, is where it's often concentrated, cold extremities, low mood, foggy thinking. And I have to say, thyroid issues are something I'm seeing more and more of in clinic, often being missed by initial testing, often because the NHS ranges are what is they're huge, and what is deemed normal for one woman can leave another woman really, really struggling. So by supporting hormone balance, it will have a beneficial knock-on impact to all of our hormones and all of our health as well. So the first top tip is starting the day right. So that first 20 to 30 minute window is absolutely crucial for setting up our mood, our energy levels, and supporting hormonal balance. So it can be really hard to do, hitting a snooze button, lying in bed, having lions and things with the curtains closed, but it does actually have big knock-on impacts to not only our energy levels but also our hormones as well. So getting daylight into our eyes within this first 20 to 30 minute window sets off a chain reaction, which fires up our cortisol levels. Now, cortisol isn't often something that we think of as something that we want to increase. When we think of cortisol, it's our stress hormone, and often something that we want to reduce. But we all need that initial spike first thing in the morning to push us out of bed, to kind of kickstart the day, but also to kickstart our metabolism and our immune system as well. So it is really crucial that we are getting that cortisol spike, and we need that daylight, natural daylight, first thing in the morning, because it also shuts off our melatonin levels. So we are then, which is our sleep inducing hormone, so we then have more energy throughout the day, and it has a knock-on impact for getting a restful night's sleep that evening as well. So just by exposing yourself to daylight first thing in the morning has a huge impact on many aspects of your health. So whether that's going for a walk first thing, throwing those blinds or the curtains open first thing in the morning, having a cup of tea outside, or by a big large window, all of those things can have a massive impact on kind of setting yourself up for the day, and also keeping those hormones in balance. So that leads me on to tip number 2, which is fueling up and how we start the day. So it can be so easy to kind of just grab a coffee, piece of toast, biscuits, something quick and easy, or maybe even nothing at all, because there's so many other things that you're needing to sort out first thing. But the number one key to hormone balance and maintaining our energy levels throughout the day is to keep our blood sugar levels balanced. So for all hormones, chemicals, compounds, nutrients, our body is happiest when it's in a tight range, and is constantly fighting to kind of bring it back into range so it can work as efficiently as possible and save energy, so that we feel energized, balanced, and hopefully bloody fantastic. So when we eat kind of quick release carbohydrates, sugary foods, sugary cereals, processed food first thing in the morning or any time throughout the day, it can lead to a spike in our blood sugar levels, which our body is then fighting to kind of bring back into range by releasing insulin, which often then means our blood sugar levels dip below the range, and we're left kind of grabbing and reaching for a quick release energy snack to kind of bring it back up to range. And it sets us on this hormonal and blood sugar roller coaster. But not only that, is insulin is a key fat storage hormone. So if we're riding that blood sugar roller coaster, we're also likely to put on weight as well. So ideally, we want to be for each meal, regardless of if it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, we want to be incorporating some healthy form of protein and fat, alongside some complex carbohydrates. So those are whole grains, non-refined, the more brown, less kind of white and fluffy carbohydrates. They're often the kind of simple processed carbohydrates. So for breakfast, this could look something like adding almond butter to toast, wholemeal bread, rather than say jam or honey or marmalade, or adding something like avocado, smoked salmon, hummus, something that's going to provide that protein and healthy fat to kind of keep those energy levels a bit more stable. My absolute favorite way to do this is having a smoothie. It can be made up in advance. It takes a couple of minutes to kind of sort out, and you can kind of prepare it in separate bags in the freezer and grab and go as and when you need. So depending on what I've got in the fridge or in the freezer, what veg I've got, I then like to add almond butter, avocado, mixed seeds, chia seeds, yogurt, something that is again a source of protein and healthy fats. So when it comes to smoothies, to kind of caveat that, we want to be ensuring that the balance is more in terms of vegetables rather than fruit, because this will keep our blood sugar levels far more stable, but also provide a decent amount of fiber, which is really, really important in ensuring that we're kind of clearing out our already used hormones, so they're not being allowed to recirculate, which can often be an issue when we've got kind of excess estrogen. It's heavily linked to the state of our gut microbiome and whether those estrogens are allowed to recirculate, which, if we're having enough fiber, should help to support the elimination of that, as well as ensuring that we're passing a stool daily, which is absolutely key to supporting hormone balance as well. That also brings me on to our third point, which is don't fear fats. Now, this is often a really, really contentious one and can often strike a lot of fear initially, into women particularly, because for so long we've been conditioned to kind of be fearful of fats and opt for low-fat alternatives, or fat-free alternatives in an effort to kind of maintain or even lose weight. But this is a really, really big misconception, and has been proven time and time again to be false. But it does take a lot to kind of shift that narrative, because it's been something that's been circulating as the pinnacle for weight loss for decades, really. But we need fat. Our sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, are steroid hormones. So they are derived from lipids, fats and cholesterols that are made by our body from the food that we're eating. Our body makes the sex hormones from the food that we eat. So we need to be ensuring that we're eating adequate amounts of beneficial fats to make and regulate our hormones. But not only that, the cells in our bodies have a lipid or fat membrane around it for structural integrity, but also to ensure the kind of communication throughout our body. So if we're not getting enough fat in our diet, our body isn't able to make hormones, but also communicate with the hormones in our body, but also neurotransmitters, happy hormones, all of those things that really help kind of support energy, mood, and obviously hormone balance as well. So if we're not getting adequate amounts of fat in our diet, our body can't make adequate levels of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone as well. So we need these in order to feel vibrant, energetic, focused, but also the kind of fats that we want to be including are things like our omega-3 sources of fatty acids, because they're the more anti-inflammatory fats and are far more supportive to our body. So that's things like oily fish, which we want to be kind of wild caught, not farm produced, because there's implications with those practices as well. So oily fish like salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring are great sources of omega-3. But obviously if fish isn't something that we want to consume, then that's not a problem. But you can get omega-3 fatty acids and things like avocado, nuts, seeds. Hemp seeds are a really good source of omega-3. Olives, olive oil. So the foods marketed as kind of fat-free, low-fat are often replaced with things like sugar or sweeteners to retain the flavour, because fat often adds flavour to food. So if we're taking the fat out, we need to restore flavour in some way. But these sugars and sweeteners can often cause havoc with our blood sugar levels and kind of set us on that roller coaster that we were just talking about. So not only that, but there is kind of growing evidence and growing research that these have an impact on our gut microbiome and the state of our gut, which will then have knock-on impacts to our hormones, as that plays our gut microbiome plays a key role in hormone synthesis, but also in not allowing them to recirculate and causing excess levels of hormones, particularly estrogen, which we just touched on. But it's also shown that it kind of increases and intensifies mood swings and cravings as well. So really avoiding those sweeteners is beneficial for our long-term health. And then top tip number 4 is magnesium. So magnesium is my absolute favorite nutrient. It has well over 600 beyond functions in our body. It supports muscle relaxation, energy production, keeping our hormone and our blood sugar levels in balance. Is needed for our hormone production, but it also supports restful sleep as well. So it's known as nature's tranquilizer, and often as a population we are lower than we should be in levels of magnesium, particularly as high levels and high periods of stress often deplete magnesium as well, which is ironic because we need a higher level of magnesium in order to support our body. So we need to be ensuring that we're consuming enough foods to be able to kind of top that up and support decent magnesium levels. So there are many ways that we can increase our magnesium levels. Foods such as spinach and often other green leafy vegetables as well, almonds, cashews, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, which all are great to add into those smoothies that we were speaking about earlier. Black beans, edamame beans are also a good source, and they can be bought frozen from a range of supermarkets and are really great roasted with a pinch of salt or some chili, and as a great snack or addition to lunch or dinner. And another great one, a great source of magnesium, is dark chocolate, which is often thought why potentially we have chocolate cravings, which can be heightened during our period, because the magnesium in the chocolate can go some way in reducing kind of those period cramps and help the muscle relaxation. We can also absorb magnesium through our skin. So by putting a cup of Epsom salts in a bath, a couple of times a week. It can be really, really great way of topping up magnesium levels to support our energy, mood, hormones, and sleep as well. It's really great just before going to bed. It can be a really great way to kind of drift off into a nice restful sleep. And Epsom salts can be bought in so many places, like chemists, supermarkets. A lot of supermarkets sell them. Home Sense is often a really good place to buy them because they're a really reasonable price. Amazon, you can buy them in bulk. So they're a really great, easy, cheap, effective way of supporting magnesium levels. And if you're thinking, hang on a minute, I'm not a bath person at all, you can pop them in like a washing up bowl and have it as a foot soak. So 1 cup of Epsom salts with some warm water and soak your feet in that for 20 minutes, whether you're watching your favorite TV program, reading your book, or even working under your desk, can be a really great way a couple of times a week to top those levels up. I do just want to caveat that and say I wouldn't recommend just going out and grabbing a supplement, a magnesium supplement, because there are so many different types of magnesium that can have different impacts. Some can kind of lead to constipation and diarrhea. So you just want to be careful with what you're taking and dependent on what your needs are. But also there's a huge range in quality of supplements, and just grabbing something, say, from a supermarket brand, or even quite a lot of the Holland and Barrett own brands they contain a lot of excipients and additional things that aren't necessarily as beneficial to health, but also they often aren't necessarily the most bioavailable form for your body to absorb, or they aren't in doses large enough to have an impact. So if that is something that you're interested in, then do just drop me a message, and I'm more than happy to chat about that further. So that brings us on to our 5th top tip, is keeping track. So often if we're trying to get pregnant, we'll track our cycles. We know when our fertile window is each month, but this isn't necessarily something that we do kind of prior to even considering starting a family, or once we have a little one. So tracking our cycles isn't just about knowing our fertile window, or for just getting pregnant. It can tell us so much more about our health, how we're feeling, and maybe what support we might be needing as well. So our menstrual cycle is now being termed our 5th vital sign. So it's just as important as blood pressure and body temperature, among our other vital signs, in determining the state of our health. For so many of us, we have no idea of what our cycle is doing, or even what's normal for us, because that can look different for us in comparison to, say, siblings or other family members or friends. So by starting to track our cycle and seeing what's normal for us, it can then give an indication of how our progesterone and estrogen levels are kind of fluctuating throughout the month, and what may be potentially causing any symptoms, but also what and determine what's normal for us as well. So this can then be used to kind of put together a supportive plan, and decide if there's further blood tests needed or hormone tests needed, and ensure that the kind of steps that you're taking to resolve any symptoms that may have arisen from that tracking and tuning in to what's going on. Then you can kind of take a personalized approach and work out the best option for you to feel like your best, really. So there are kind of apps like Natural Cycles, which is a good way of recording that information by taking your basal body temperature every morning as you're waking up. It will show a change in blood and body temperature, which can then indicate kind of levels of progesterone increase, which can then tell you where you are at in your cycle. But if all this is really new to you and you're thinking, I don't even know where to start with an app, I have created a guide to kind of help, and a really easy way to kind of start tracking your cycles. And I will add that when I send out the recording tomorrow in the email, so that you can kind of download that and use that if you find that useful. So that brings us to the end of those top 5 points. So just to recap, first one is start the day right. So really do make the most of that 20 to 30 minute window first thing with getting daylight in, because it will have such a knock-on impact to the rest of your day, but also your long-term health as well. Number 2, fueling up. So make sure that you're including a source of healthy protein and healthy fat with each meal. And smoothies are a really great way of doing that. I'll also add, I've got some really lovely kind of breakfast smoothies recipes that I'll add into the email as well, so that you've got those to kind of experiment with and see if it works for you. Tip 3 was don't fear fats. We really do need fats. They are essential in our diet. We do need them for building our hormones and helping those kind of communicate throughout our body as well. So it's definitely not something to be avoided. I mean, in moderation, and there are fats that are less beneficial, those kind of processed fats, vegetable oils, those kind of things are best avoided. But those omega-3 fatty acids that we spoke about, the mixed seeds, avocado, oily fish, hemp seeds, those kind of omega-3 fatty acids are really, really important to be consuming daily. Tip number 4, magnesium, my absolute favorite, a really great nutrient, a really, really important nutrient, and just by adding some extra portions of leafy green veg in every day, and if you're adding those some nuts and seeds as well, will really start to kind of build those magnesium levels, or by having regular Epsom salt baths or foot soaks are another great way. And then tip number 5, keeping track. It's really, really important to know what's right for you and what's working and best for your body, because no one can tell you what your body should be like. You know your body best, and you know when it's working well and when it's maybe needing a little bit more support. So that's why I think it's really, really important to track it, and so you know what's best, and you can be your own health advocate and your own body advocate. So these tips should really help to kind of push the needle, and you should start to feel more energized, calm, and hopefully unstoppable. So if you notice that things still don't feel right, and maybe some further digging is needed, then I'd be more than happy to chat with you further, and I offer a free 30-minute call. So if that is something that you're interested in, just hit reply to the email, and we can chat further. But yeah, I'm more than happy to have a chat and to kind of put you on the right path. Or if you just want to bounce some ideas off, then by all means we can have a chat. That's absolutely fine. I'll share those recipe ideas. I'll share those tracking resources so that you've got those as well. So basically, with those 5 top tips, and what I'm trying to get across is we are all beautifully individual. We are all unique. So please don't feel like you have to suffer or put up with something if it doesn't feel right, because I think there's a lot of women we feel like we have to just put up with, whereas just because that's seen as kind of common, it doesn't mean it's normal, and it doesn't mean that it's something that you have to put up with or suffer through. But also, supporting yourself doesn't mean kind of it has to involve lists and lists of things that you can and can't do, restrictive diets, punishing your body to kind of look or feel a certain way. Like that in the long term isn't going to leave you feeling your best. So let's learn to love the skin that we're in and kind of tune in to what feels right for us. And that's why I really, really think that a personalized and individual approach is so, so important, because when we feel more calm, balanced, and rested, this has a massive positive knock-on impact to not only ourselves but those around us as well. So I hope that you found that really really useful, and I know it's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I'm kind of conscious that you know, I don't want to overwhelm anyone with any kind of full-on information. It's small, simple, consistent steps that make the biggest difference. So I don't want to keep you any longer, because I know that the sun's shining here, and hopefully it's shining with you guys as well, which is something that we've had for for a few weeks. So I'll let you go on and enjoy the rest of your evening. But if you've got any questions, or you just want to chat further, then please do hit reply in the email that I'm sending out tomorrow with the recording, or feel free to message me on my social media, Instagram at naturallybright_nutrition. I'm more than happy to chat. My DMs are open, so I would love to chat further. So yeah, have a lovely, lovely evening, and hopefully I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Take care.